Say there. So we're going to work with some shapes and some other types of art creation tools and techniques today. There I go, saying today again. Next, we've been working with the pencil and the pen. We're going to take it further now into a basic shape, which is using the line tool. The line tool located in the same grouping as the pen and pencil. The line tool has 5 variations, well, 3 variations of a line, and then they got some other stuff that is very unlikely you'll ever use them, but they're there. The line, very simple way to use this line. You click, you drag, you let go, you have a line. The line is a stroke only. You can't have a fill with a line. So your stroke color could be anything: blue, red, green. Stroke weight, we'll fatten that up so we can actually see it. Come on, there we go. And the line has, I'm not even going to look at that. No, we're not going to go there yet. The line has some stroke characteristics that we'll talk about under the stroke. So if you were to just click on the word stroke, it opens up the stroke options. I think we talked about these a little bit back when I first went into the pencil, maybe. Anyways, I'm going to bypass these first settings, and I'm just going to jump right to the dashed line. If you click dashed line, your line that was solid is now in the shape of a dash. And the initial setting is a 12-point dash with an equal 12-point gap. And this is when I will now go back up and show you the cap options. So right now the cap options are set to a butt cap, where the line ends where the anchor points are. So here, maybe you can see it. Anchor point is right here. Let's get closer. There's my anchor point, and the line actually ends right flush with that point. If I go back in and I change it to a round cap, the nature of the line is now round and extends past the point, but the radius change begins at that perpendicular whatever imaginary line where that path ends. And then the last option is a extended cap. I think that's what they call it, projecting cap. So you can get different styles of dash, not just a line, but just in the dash line as well. I'll zoom back out. So the dash, you can change just anything you want. It could be a 4-point dash. And now those dashes are much smaller. And the gap itself is also going to be smaller. Unless I went to that gap field next to it and I said I'd like that gap to go back to 12. So now I've gone to a smaller dash, bigger gap. I could go again with a 4-point dash, another 12 gap, but that doesn't really change anything. It's all the same. They give you the option to change your dash your dash and gap. Gosh, don't be cutting yourself while you're working with Illustrator. We don't want like, gashes on our arms or anything like that. Okay, so let me go back to the dash. I'll do like a 10-point dash and a 20-point gap, and then a 5-point dash and a 10-point gap. And you can start to see that the pattern of this dotted line is changing. And I mean, I have a chance to do even another one if I really wanted to. I could go, you know, smaller or whatever. But this this little sequence of dashes is very common for cartographers doing map work. You end up seeing lines that separate states or countries, whatever, and they have kind of an interesting series of dashes that aren't so perfect. You know, they'll have kind of a longer dash and then a small one or whatever, and that's how you would set that up here. And things that affect this are the weight. You know, so if your weight is not so heavy, then your dash lines end up being a bit more finessed or elegant or recognizable. My weight was pretty high, so they were pretty big and bulky, and it's kind of hard to see the nature of that dash line when they're like that. But then the other things that are going to change the way that this dotted line and its appearance are going to be those caps. So the caps will change that appearance. But these caps are not just for dotted lines; they're for any line. And it's something that you should get used to checking out and seeing if it improves the nature of your lines or what. Oh, arrowheads. So we have arrowheads. You can pick an arrow head, different types of them. So there's some flared out ones, some bold, blunt ones, and there's like a ton of them. There's 30. Whoa! I've never even scrolled down all these things. Scissors? What would that mean? It means cut here. Gosh, they make things so easy for us, don't they? So this arrow, I'll go back to something that works a little bit better for us. Well, this decorative one's cool. I'm going to take the dashed line off as well. So I have an arrow head at this end of the line, and then I could put another arrow at the other end if I wanted to. Donk. So that's kind of a nice decorative line, or I could go down and put an end to it. Yeah, that's kind of cool. So special arrows, you don't have to worry about drawing them yourself anymore. They're built right into this stroke feature. I'm going to go back to this one. So those are pretty neat. You can change the scale of them and you know, make them so they're not so big, or and then you can also make the arrow, choose to make the arrow either go beyond the tip of the path or end at the tip of the path. So that's what those things are. So one last thing about this line tool is that it's a start for a line. It's a straight line. A straight line can come in handy. We use them very often. But what if you wanted to get a little bit of a bend in there or something like that? Two ways to go about this. If I wanted this thing to be arched, I would take my pen tool, probably my pen plus, the add anchor point, and then somewhere in the middle of that path I would add an anchor point. I would grab my direct selection tool and I would bring it down. So this isn't quite a curve, but it's kind of cool, starting almost like a clock hands or something. But then if I grab my convert anchor point tool and click and drag on that middle point, you know, now I've got a nice curve. So you can see that you know, what starts off as a straight line can become very you know, quite varied in its appearance rather quickly, with dashes, arrows, just bending it, you know, adding points. You know what, even if I didn't have that on there, let me take that point away. If I'm back to a straight line, you can still use the convert anchor point tool on those endpoints and kind of just bend it yourself that way. So there's kind of the same result without having added a point. experiment with that. Play with it. See what happens. Get good with it. That's the trick here. Is to get good with these things. All right, so that's the line tool. I am going to delete that. The next deal down the line is the arc tool. The arc tool will draw an arc. So instead of a straight line, you have an arc. If you hold down shift, it keeps it basically locked into a quarter arc. Oh, and because my last line had the appearance of green 6-point stroke and arrowheads, the next line that I draw is also going to have the same appearance. And that is one of those things that is a result of going to the appearance window. I think I talked about this in another movie. Going to the appearance window, going to the little flyout menu and making sure that new art has basic appearances either unchecked or checked depending on what you want. If you want to always go back to a 1-point black stroke, no arrowheads, then you would want to check this, but usually people don't. And once again, usually that means just me, and I put myself in a class of other people. So that's the arc tool. You'll maybe use it, probably not. The spiral tool, well, that draws spirals with arrowheads on them. That's pretty wonky. So the spiral tool, it just saves you the time of having to draw a spiral yourself. And yeah, I never use it, which means no one else does, right? And we have a rectangular grid tool. This will allow you to draw a grid real quick. You could see how this could become handy. Just saving you trouble of having to not draw all those lines or all those shapes. If you draw with the grid and keep shift held down, it'll be constrained to a perfect square. And this could be good for setting up a graph, or you could even use it for artwork somehow. And at the very bottom of the list for this tool is the polar grid tool. And polar grids, they belong in every piece of artwork or illustration. Yeah, so there's that. No arrowheads on these because there's no end of a line. Everything is a closed path. You can't have arrowheads on a closed path. You can only have arrowheads on paths that are open and have endpoints. So the grid tool and this thing here, they don't have any open ends. So that's why there's no arrowhead. All right, delete it. So those are the tools that are available for you here. And if you were to do things like double click on the line tool, you can specify a length, an angle. So there's that stuff, but usually you just end up drawing it. And then we're going to jump into the shapes. And these shapes here start with a rectangle. There's a rounded rectangle, an ellipse, polygon star, and a flare tool. I'm just going to go through these real quick because they're kind of no-brainers. And we'll be working with shapes more in a little bit. The rectangle tool obviously is going to draw a rectangle. The rectangle itself can be filled, with a stroke or with no stroke. I'll make it a different color. So shapes, just like a pen shape or pencil shape, can have fills or strokes, or both. But the rectangle tool, if you want a perfect square, you hold down shift, keeps a perfect square. That's basically the good stuff. And then if we go to rounded rectangle, it's the same thing as a rectangle, only it has rounded corners. And those corners, if you remember the very first super boring video that you watched of mine, we talked about preferences. Preferences have right at the very beginning in general is your corner radius. So every rectangle I draw, no matter what size it is going to have a corner radius of 12 pixels because that's what my setting is in my preferences. If I was to change that to like 25, now when I go draw another one, those corners are bigger. So if you're ever trying to figure out where to make those corners bigger or smaller, then you have to go into the preferences and change it there. Some programs that allow you to draw rounded rectangles like Flash or something like that, have nice little handles that come off of them where you can specify their corner radius very easily without having to go to a menu or something like that. So those are our rounded rectangles. I'm going to do a select all and delete. Then we have the ellipse. The ellipse tool will draw an ellipse or a perfect circle if you hold down shift, and it behaves very similar to the other things with pertaining to fills and strokes and all that. The polygon tool draws polygons, and if you push up or down on your keypad while you draw it, you're going to increase the amount of sides that your polygon has. So there's 3-sided. I can go up one more. Whoa, it's really touchy. Really touchy. Why is that so touchy? Oh, I had it. There's a square. Can I go to 5? Barely. No, it's an octagon. 8. So you can see that I end up with a polygon that's sort of advanced. That's what your arrow keys will do. So different kinds of polygons there. The star tool, let's do a select all and delete. The star tool, and I'm tired of that gross orange. Let's go with blue. The star tool draws a star. Imagine that. If you ever draw a shape and you don't really like where it's at and you want to move it, before you let go, press spacebar and move it. So I haven't let go yet. If I hold shift, it keeps the star, basically locked in to an angle. It doesn't have anything to do with proportion. But I can also go up in the amount of points my star has by pressing up or down on my arrow key. And then there's this crazy thing that you can do by holding down Command, and that extends the outer radius of your points and not the inner radius. What's the other thing? Well, Option. Yeah, Option does a quick jump to wherever your wherever your diameter was. Diameter? No, inner radius. That's it. So command tool, get used to using the command tool. So like there's like a seal, a nice golden seal shape. Or if I start in deep and go really long, I get some pretty neat starburst sort of stars. Kind of reminds me of the old retro things that you'd find on the cool Bel Air motel or whatever. Actually, the more I stare at this thing, it's starting to do some really weird sucking me into the middle kind of vortex deals. The light. Don't go towards the light. So that's your star tool. Another one that you should play around with in those settings. And I teach this class physically, where I can walk around with students. And this one always confuses the heck out of them. How do you get the points to go long or short? Or look at my star, it's totally screwed. Because now if I were to delete it and go draw another star, I believe it's going to have that same setting. It's going to be all those crazy points. And if it's the case, then just remember you can press down on the down arrow, and then you can use your command key to bring your points back down to something that's more manageable. Is there a reset? There is, and I can't remember what it is. Do I double click on the star? No. Somewhere there's a setting where you can reset that thing. I'm not going to go digging for it right now. The very last one's a flare tool, and I'm not even going to go there right now. It's much better when there's already existing artwork to flare with, but it's cool, but we'll check it out later. So those are basic shapes, and next we're going to talk about alignment and distribution and stuff like that.